Blood Time, the podcast that speaks to the bond, the emotion between coach and athlete at the interscholastic and intercollegiate level. Each interview, each segment will reveal that bond and what was learned, how they were transformed, and what each athlete took to the world at large from that transformation. These stories will warm your heart and astound you altogether. Submitted for your approval. Now it is blood time. I want to thank Serve Pro of Beechwood, our newest sponsor, and Jack Coslin, the owner. They serve all of Northeast Ohio, not just Beechwood. They specialize in disaster cleanup that leaves your home or office like new, like it never happened. Flood and water damage, fire, mold, and they say even blood and guts. Not just any Serve Pro. Seek out Serve Pro of Beechwood. That's Serve Pro Beechwood, Shaker Heights, ClevelandHeights.com, 216-464-4498. Operated by a former All-State wrestler from Beechwood, we love Serve Pro of Beechwood. Welcome. This is Coach CIMORONI to Blood Time, and I want to thank my last guest, Brian Zide, Beechwood wrestler, but also very successful businessman. And the lesson that we took away from Brian, I believe, is all in. And when he was in, he was all in wrestling and in business. And he has two successful businesses as well as a full-time job. Now, that's an ambitious guy with a great work ethic. I want to thank Brian Zide and his wisdom that he brought to us last week. In studio today, very fortunate to have an NCAA finalist, two-time state champ for St. Ignatius, the Jesuit high school over on the west side of Cleveland. A good friend of mine, the head coach there is Mark Sullivan, also a pretty good stud in football and wrestling. And we're here today with George DiCamillo. How you doing, George?
Doing great. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. And I knew your father. Yeah. Way back when. Matter of fact, I didn't wrestle against him. We had a scrimmage back in 1974 when he was a senior. I wrestled against a kid by the name of Tim Armelli.
Sounds familiar.
And Tim Armelli ended up being the head coach at Lake Catholic and at Chardon, and he put a hurt on me. But I'm sure your dad would have too, because he was fourth in the state, I believe, that year.
Yeah,
too,
he
right?
was good.
Yeah, so welcome. And you have a pretty interesting lineage as well. You've got a former pro golfer who was on the tour, who I played against. Gary Trevisano is your uncle, right?
Yeah, so Gary Trevisano is my uncle. So golfing, I did it when I was a little kid. And then Mike Trevisano is my uncle as well, my mom's brother. Yeah,
that's right. Mike, the famous radio host that has been on since, probably the early 90s, right?
Yeah.
I think. Yeah, he's terrific. I've been on his show a couple times. Matter of fact, when we started Wrestlers in Business, he was kind enough to have us on to talk about that. And also, too, sadly, when his first wife died, I was on, and we did a nice donation on the show for his fund for Linda.
Yeah.
Yes. So please give my best to Gary and to your uncles, Mike and Gary, and your dad, Ralph.
Definitely will.
I want to tell you a story before we get into this interview with you and talk a little bit about your history and some of the things that you're doing now in the business world. But I played against Gary Trevisano in high school.
Okay.
We were freshmen in high school, and we were playing at Landerhaven, which was back then.
At the time.
Now it's a corporate center, which a lot of golf courses have turned into.
Right.
And I was a freshman. He was a freshman. Okay, but he was a lot bigger than me.
Yeah.
I think he was a quarterback too for the St. Joe's football team, and the kicker. I think he kicked for maybe Alabama or something.
He may have. Yeah. When I think so.
Yeah. Back in the day. But anyhow, so there was 2 par 5. It was a weird course. There was 3 nines, and it was a weird par situation where the first hole on the red course was a short par 4. Then they had 2 par 5s in a row.
Wow.
Odd, right?
Yeah.
And it was down Lander Road. So a few Clevelanders, Lander Road is kind of a cool street. Anyhow, so he gets up there, and this is back in the day with the crappy balls and the woods and everything. And he bangs one almost 280. Okay, takes out a 9-iron, hits the green, gets an eagle.
Oh wow.
Okay, wait a minute.
Not uncommon,
right? The next hole does the same thing. I had never seen 2 eagles in a row in my life. Since then, I mean, we were in ninth grade.
I'm sure he remembers that, yeah.
He shot a 33.
Wow.
I shot a 42. I thought I was like, shooting
world record
my
for
eyes
you.
out.
Yeah.
Right? And he beat me by 9 strokes and 9 holes.
Jeez.
It was terrible. It was crazy. So I'll never forget him. But I've known your uncle over the years. He's a terrific guy, and he's a great representative of the sport of golf.
Yeah.
So getting through that. Thank you for letting me have that aside.
No, it's great. Yeah.
It is my show.
Small world.
So, absolutely. So. Yeah. So, George, you started wrestling way back in, the 6th or 7th grade or
maybe even before, yeah.
Okay.
I remember going to Mayfield Wrestling Club practices when I was a little kid.
Yeah.
Probably a little bit in the beginning, like against my will sort of thing.
Okay.
My dad really wanted me to go to wrestling.
Well, he was a stud.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But just the people I was around when I was in Mayfield were really high level. We had an awesome team.
Sure.
And it was just sort of like a really tough environment. So
yeah.
Yeah, it was hard really at first.
Now, was Abinator with you? Was Dominic Abinator with you?
Dom Abinator was with me. My first drill partner actually was Johnny DeJulius.
Oh, my God. So that's 8 state championships.
Yeah.
And that's not bad. Not bad company, right?
Yeah, we always talk. In fact, I saw Cody Hayes at a benefit for one of my coaches that we a couple weeks ago. And we just talked about how good our team was when we were at Mayfield. Sure. If everyone would have went to Mayfield sort of thing, we could have been a really, really good team. But we had a really good club team. We took second in the state one year.
Yeah.
But yeah, Mayfield is where I started, and it all took off from there.
So you drilled with Johnny.
Yeah.
What was that like? I mean, as a kid, was he sort of the same kind of wrestler, or did you guys both evolve to a different style? Or
well, yeah, he started a couple years before me. So initially, when Coach Koss, my first coach, put us together, he'd sort of kick my butt.
Okay.
Frequently, and
Gotcha.
I would hate going to practice. He would kick my butt.
Oh my
and,
gosh.
You just sort of learn to adapt from there. That's sort of the fun sort of chess match of wrestling. You adapt based on other people's styles, and it definitely forces you to get tougher in certain situations.
And it's interesting, too, because he has kind of the similar story. His only loss at the state tournament was to a 3-time state champ, one of his good friends, Ty Mitch from Aurora, and he says he used to get his butt kicked by Ty Mitch.
Yeah, exactly.
Better, So that's how you get better, right?
Yeah.
You want to go after guys that are better than you to get you better. And I think that's the sport, right?
Yeah.
The sport is very honest.
Yeah.
There's no question about it. If he's better, he's better.
Yeah.
So that was a great foundational situation for you, correct?
Yeah.
So after that, what made you? Because I know that you wrestled my nephew Mark Worthington, right?
Oh,
you
yeah.
wrestled for a cup of coffee, right?
Yeah, we wrestled briefly. Yeah.
Yeah.
We were best friends growing up, and he actually was really talented with wrestling. He's obviously way better in like football and basketball, baseball and stuff, but he had a real gift for wrestling. I remember I would used to get in on shots on him, and it would just be so hard to score because he was so stingy.
Yes.
But he went on to play football and baseball and basketball. So
yeah, that's cool, right?
Yeah.
So tell me what made your determination to? I know that you went to St. Francis. Is that where you went?
Mm-hmm.
So what made your determination? What decided? What was the deciding factor for St. Ignatius?
For Ignatius, honestly, the primary reason I went to Ignatius was in 7th grade going into 8th grade. Mm-hmm. I did what was called the Summer Enrichment Program with a bunch of my friends.
Yep.
And, it really had nothing to do with wrestling. It had a little bit to do with wrestling, but I got used to the school and the teachers. The Summer Enrichment Program was essentially 7th graders going to 8th grade who went there in the first half of the day for five during the week.
Yeah.
We do classes and stuff for the first half of the day.
Wow.
Just learning different things. And then the second half of the day, we'd be in teams and play sports and go visit different places around Cleveland.
So really bond, right?
So just really grow a brotherhood there, which I think was the ultimate reason I decided to go to Ignatius. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
And then you meet Mark Sullivan, right?
Yeah.
Now Mark's wow. If obviously the younger generation may not know how great an athlete Mark Sullivan was.
Yeah.
But he was the MVP of the Ohio State-Michigan game in 1980.
Oh yeah.
As a 5'10", 225 pound.
Just a bull. Yeah.
Middle guard, right?
Yeah.
And then he ended up going to. I guess there were some issues with his family. I think his mother got ill, so he had to leave Ohio State, and he ended up finishing at John Carroll.
Yeah.
And at John Carroll, he took second in the nation twice in wrestling and
Yeah.
heavyweight. And, what I mean? So you got some good genes there, right?
Yeah,
so
it was.
You got good genes from your family, and now you go in and you meet Mark Sullivan. So tell me a little bit about what that was like with that stud as well, and also, too, some of the studs, obviously, that they attract at St. Ignatius.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. So I met Sullivan at an open house. That same year I went to the SCP program, and he's a great guy.
Yep.
His mindset around the sport is great. He's a really loyal guy, and that's the thing I take from him most is really loyal guy, and he cares a lot.
Yeah.
Toward the later half of high school, I was at a certain level. My dad would help me travel to different tournaments from a national perspective, and he's just always there, willing to help, always there to come in on a weekend when nobody else would, just to help me. So he's a really selfless guy, and I couldn't thank him enough for
that.
What he
that
did.
is definitely his reputation.
Mm-hmm.
There's no question about that. And
he cares a whole lot.
He does, and I had the honor of literally grading his master's thesis.
Really?
Yes, he got his master's thesis from at the time it was Dyke College that turned into Myers University, and I was on the board.
Wow.
And so I get in there, and so I didn't even know, right? And all of a sudden, Mark Sullivan walks in, and he does his presentation. I go, pass.
Easy check.
Yeah, easy check. I have another crazy story about Mark. Mark was wrestling against Trenton State in 1987.
Okay.
I was the referee.
Mm-hmm.
And Trenton was ranked second in the country. John Carroll was first.
Right.
And so they come in for a dual meet, and Trenton State is getting hammered. Okay, the match was 21-2 going into the heavyweight. Right. So this kid from Trenton State is a street kid from Trenton, New Jersey. He's just like you could just tell he's almost like a thug,
Right. And
he doesn't know. I mean, he knows Mark, but he doesn't know Mark, right? And Mark's definitely a guy you don't want to mess with,
right?
Outside.
You probably grab a hold of him, and he's like, "Holy crap,
holy crap!" Right. So he starts leading with the head.
Mm-hmm.
I hit him for 1 point. He leads with the head again. I call him in. I go, dude, do not lead with the head again.
Especially against this guy.
So guess what he does?
Boom.
Leads with the head. Sully's over me. He's on this guy I mean, it was a free for all. Finally, we had to get the cops come in, pull this guy out, and throw him out. You know what I mean? And the guy's flipping everybody off, and there's priests in the stand.
Yeah,
it was crazy. It was one of the most burned in memories of me.
Wow, I'm sure you remember. Yeah,
exactly right. So. But he was definitely somebody not to be messed with.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But also so quiet. I mean, just a quiet leader, right? So I think that's a great thing to be a leader of word, thought, and deed.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I love that you had that opportunity.
Yeah, definitely the deed part. He's a very selfless person. So it's funny, my dad, when I went to Ignatius, he sort of gave my dad the reins of running practice.
Wow.
From the time I was a freshman through senior year, and even a little bit after I left.
How cool.
Just acknowledging, he's, my dad was really good at running practice and stuff, but more through deed is giving people the opportunity to lead where they're great. Awesome. And that's sort of a trait that I took from him as well.
That is really cool.
Mm-hmm.
So you ended up becoming a 2-time state champ there.
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit about what that was like to be at that pinnacle. Ohio State champ is pretty tough to do.
Yeah. So it took a lot of hard work. It took 3 tries. It took 3 tries for me to do it.
Okay.
And I think it was a product of the environment.
Yeah.
The Ohio State tournament, obviously, like you said, is really hard.
Yep.
It took, obviously, like I said, 3 tries. It took a lot of competition.
Sure.
From, I won Ironman twice before I even won an Ohio State championship.
Wow.
And the people I got to face in the state tournament were no joke. I mean, my sophomore year, I lost to Dean.
Yeah.
My freshman year,
Dean Heil.
For
guys that don't know.
Right.
Dean,
yeah.
Dean Heil, 3-time state champ, right? Or was he 4?
He was 4.
4-time. That's right. Right.
Yeah. And then my freshman year, I was a little undersized, but even in practice,
right.
in practice for 2 years, the first 2 years I was in high school, I was sort of led by Jerome Robinson.
Oh, yeah. Wow.
And he sort of, like I was talking about with Johnny,
sure,
showed me the way definitely through giving me some beatings in practice and showing me sort of a lot of the technique that he had acquired over time. And, through all of that, the culmination of the competition, the hard practice partners, just putting myself in a situation that was uncomfortable and not being afraid to fail. That was the biggest thing for me is, I would seek out harder competition, whether it was going to different practices or my dad taking me to different tournaments. It was seeking that competition out that really made me want to be better and got me better ultimately.
And, so one of the things, and I love this whole mentality that you're bringing to the show today, is that we talk about this a lot, is showing, is finding out what not to do as well.
Mm-hmm.
What to do, but also by getting your nose bloodied, don't put yourself in that position. Don't put yourself at that angle. Don't put yourself with your head down or whatever that is, right? And so now I know what not to do.
Right. And it's being afraid not to fail too.
Exactly right. We say fail forward.
Fail forward.
Fail it forward.
Yeah, it's funny. That's the name of a book. And in fact, when I was getting recruited, a lot of different schools, but we had a good relationship with the Carr family. And Nate Sr. had made a couple trips up to Cleveland, and
sure.
I remember I did a camp with him and actually got to meet David when he was really little, when he was like a little kid.
Wow. Yeah.
And I'll never forget, he gave me a book, and it was called Failing Forward.
Love it.
And it was revolved around that whole mindset of not being afraid to fail. The ultimate measure of success is, how you learn to grow from those failures.
Yes.
And I read that book right before I went to college, and I really think that helped my trajectory as I went on to, do obviously everything I did in college.
Well, that's fantastic, and I'm so encouraged to hear this, George. It's just great to see that. I could see the smile on your face. And also the other thing too that I wanted to address was the guys that you beat in the state finals. Okay, talk to me a little bit about that junior guy and that senior guy. Your junior year and your senior year. Do you have respect for those guys?
Oh, yeah.
Tell me
I grew up, so my junior year I wrestled Edgar Bright in the state finals.
Oh, my goodness.
And it was a highly anticipated match from a lot of different standpoints. Obviously, the St. Ignatius-St. Ed's rivalry.
Yes.
And just the history I'd had the prior year with Dean Heil. And obviously the Ignatius rivalry, like I said. But even going back to junior high, I wrestled Edgar in the junior high state finals as well. Right. My 8th grade year, and I was able to win that. So a very highly anticipated match, and a lot of respect for, obviously, the St. Ed's program. I have a lot of friends who coach on St. Ed's team now. Sure. So, and I know that they're one of the best teams. So, obviously, beating someone sort of that caliber was a good mile mark for me to sort of know where I was at going into my senior year.
Yep.
My senior year, I wrestled Max Bird. He was from Cincinnati, LaSalle.
Yeah, tough kid.
He actually went on to wrestle D2, I believe, at Ashland.
Okay.
And his little brother is wrestling now at Illinois, I think.
Oh. With another with Heffernan.
Yeah, exactly.
Cool.
Yeah.
Sure. Another St. Ed's guy.
Yeah. And another close match. My match with Edgar was an overtime match. Both my state finals matches were pretty close. Yeah. I think, not regret, but in high school a little bit, I sort of held it tight to the vest a little bit.
Okay. And
so
you didn't pull the trigger.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that happens a lot. That happens a lot. I get that.
It's trial and error. It was my first time in the situation. Not to say, I wrestled bad or didn't wrestle to my best, but as I moved on to college, I sort of learned to let it fly a little bit more. Yeah, and we talk about that in practice. But it's interesting, too, because Edgar Bright, right, the guy you beat, comes from a pretty tough family. Right, you know? And we coached against them. They wrestled, I believe, for Collinwood. Collinwood, yeah. And Benny Bright, who was the uncle, I believe was the uncle of Edgar, was a National Junior College All-American. I believe I think he placed a state, too. And I ended up wrestling him in an old man tournament. Yeah. And he was tough. Yeah, crazy. Yeah, and going back to junior high, before we had wrestled in the state finals, one of my club teams I used to go to was Eric Burnett's club. There you go. And I used to wrestle Edgar there. My dad and his dad we'd always hang out at the Burnett camps. I remember just the battles in that room and just the practices we would go through. And the respect, right? And the respect that you build over time. It's funny. I think back to my club days and to all the different partners I had at a certain point in time. And I remember every Wednesday, and it's still a thing, those Solon Open mats that they have. Oh, yeah. The Some of my kids go there. Absolutely, absolutely. It's still a thing. I actually did a clinic last summer at the Solon. We love Tony DiGiovanni. But I remember my four-man group consistently that when I was in like 5th, 6th grade, the four-man group that I was a part of, looking back, it's crazy. It was me, Nate Tomasello, Dean Heil, and Anthony Colica. That was our four-man group. Just a bunch of punkers, man. Yeah, so they got no talent. So to your point about trial and error and learning how to fail, that was pretty humbling to be a part of that four-man group where we're just banging heads constantly. And every one of them had their own style. Yeah. So bringing so many different kinds of looks to you. Yeah. You know what? You're getting a pretty good comprehensive look of the sport. And it's good too. We were all part of different clubs, so it's like Wednesday. It was sort of like our match days in the summer, where we would go back to our clubs. Get better on certain things, and then we'd bring whatever we learned to that Wednesday practice the next week just to see where we're at and continue to try to get each other better. That's fantastic. That is just, it's almost like back in the day when in the 20s, they had a thing called the Algonquin Round Table. Yeah. And all these wonderfully, incredibly talented, fantastic intellects would come together and just start spewing stuff. Mm-hmm. Let's talk about life. Get enough great people in a room. Philosophy. Exactly right. Yeah. Mastermind, right? Yeah. Like Dale Carnegie says, mastermind group. Mm-hmm. Beautiful stuff. So, you get all this wonderful foundation in the club at St. Ignatius, and now I look at your warm-up, and it's Virginia wrestling. Yeah. I guess you went there, right? Yeah. So tell me a little bit about how you made the decision to go to Virginia and a little bit about the experience there. It was a really, really hard decision. It took me a really long time to decide. That's an ACC school, right? ACC. Okay. Yeah. So I visited a bunch of different schools. I
Gotcha.
probably made 10 or 12 unofficial visits. I took 4 of my official visits. But the 2 schools it really came down to were Ohio State and Virginia.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
So looking back and to see, obviously where Ohio State is right now,
Sure.
it probably looks like an even harder decision. And it was a really hard choice.
Right.
Tom Ryan's big pitch to me was, stay in state, represent your home state.
Right. Yeah.
And, despite being 7 hours away from home,
yes,
UVA really just felt like a home to me. The bond that was grown between me and Coach Garland, the coach at UVA, during the recruiting process, and Jordan Lean, who was there at the time, our assistant coach.
Sure.
The bond we built was it was far more than wrestling, and
cool.
that's what I was looking for. It was a school that would support me wrestling, obviously academically, but just care about me as a person, and not that Ohio State didn't. They certainly cared about me as a person.
Yes,
had their best interest in mind.
Graduated some amazing human beings out of there. Right?
Exactly, yeah. But I just felt something different about Charlottesville that despite being 7 hours away. Yeah. It really felt like home when I was down there. There were some Ohio guys down there at the time.
Okay.
And a couple actually St. Ed's guys who we were some of my best friends to date. Gus Seiko, Nick Solzer.
Oh, sure. Seiko, Defenso.
Yeah.
We love Defenso.
Yep.
We love his father. His father's a great guy.
Guy's awesome.
Oh, my gosh. What a soft-spoken, wonderful guy.
Lead by example guy. Hardworking, blue collar.
Indeed. I have a high respect for him. So, and maybe one day we'll get him on the show.
Yeah.
And his son. Who knows? But... Hey guys, I want to thank Affinity Whole Health and the owner, Brian Zide. He started this company to get you feeling like you were in your prime. You can reach this company at feelgreatcleveland.com. Founded obviously by a former wrestler athlete and his partner, who's also a former wrestler and athlete. The whole goal for this is to get you feeling like you're in your prime, but also helps you with muscle definition and strength, increased libido, increased energy and drive, increased mental acuity, obviously increases your confidence if you get all those, and increases recovery time from workouts. If you like all those things and you want all those things, check them out at feelgreatcleveland.com. Thank you again, Brian Zide and Affinity Whole Health. So tell me a little bit about the Virginia experience, and obviously you had a pretty good run. You were ACC champ a few times, right?
Yeah,
and then you ended up making the finals against a rival.
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit about that whole experience and what that taught you.
Yeah. So when I first got to Virginia, it was a pretty humbling experience.
Okay.
And, through getting beatings in the room, going to a couple opens, really sort of learning where I was.
Welcome to college wrestling.
Exactly, yeah.
Exactly.
I think in high school, my dad being my coach, and my primary coach, he was a high school wrestler. You obviously know he was.
Yeah, he took third in the state, right, for Benedictine. Yep, 126, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And wrestling's changed a lot since he was in high school.
Sure.
So I think what I learned in high school is sort of how to get tough and get things done.
Yeah.
That was sort of the lesson I learned from Mayfield Wrestling Club all the way through to high schools. Just how to really learn how to work hard and value certain things and do the right things to get to where I wanted to get to.
Sure.
When I got to college, I actually had to learn how to wrestle.
Yeah.
So
because everybody has that pretty much at your wrestling.
Yeah. So a lot in high school, I won on will and just out toughing guys. But when I got to college, I had to learn specific techniques and specific game plans on like how to win.
Gotcha.
And that's the first lesson I learned pretty quickly in college. In practice, I used to, days before open tournaments, I was getting beaten pretty badly, and then I'd go out and win the open at the end of the week with the guys who I'd been practicing with in the same bracket as me.
I'll be darned.
Just because when you're in that tournament setting, I was familiar with. When you're in a tournament, it's just a different sort of mindset than practice. And
yes, it is.
The sort of leaning back on the foundation I learned from high school is just getting tough and finding a way to get it done.
Awesome. So give me a specific. What is that specific thing that you learned and how to manage that match and win that match? Yeah. Tell me something.
I told this plenty of times when I was coaching at John Carroll is you really can't simulate a match, and there's a specific skill to learning how to compete when the lights are on.
Right.
And being put in uncomfortable situations in practice, in things like the Ohio State tournament, Super 32, things like that.
Right.
Putting yourself in that uncomfortable situation will help build you to that point to where when you're under the lights in a high pressure situation, you can really compete to the level you know you're capable of doing. And some people don't really practice that. Some people like to hold it close to the vest. Yeah. Certainly in practice, but then when they get in competition, sort of when adversity gets thrown their way, they sort of don't really know what to do. But from my foundation growing up, growing from Mayfield all the way through Ignatius, especially with the help of my dad. Yes. Just learning how to be tough when times are tough. That's cool. Adversity is inevitable. Yeah, it is. And it's sort of how you react to it that defines you.
Love that. So you do well in the ACC, but have a little bit of a hiccup at the NCAAs a couple of years. But man, your senior year, you make it. Yeah. You make it. Tell me a little bit about that trail.
Yeah, so the journey was crazy. I started at 133 pounds as a freshman. Sure. To back up a little bit, I started at 125, which was a massive cut for me. Oh, that's awful. I definitely learned nutritional values, and we had specific sports nutritionists who were assigned to the wrestling team to help me with that task. But ultimately, bumped up to 33, and I say bumped up to 33 cautiously because, by the time I was a junior, I was cutting so much weight to get to 33. Sure. And doing the right things, but it was just you're growing. My body was growing. I didn't really start growing until sophomore year.
You're in fantastic shape.
Yeah.
I know, so I'm sure you're about 145, 150.
Well, about 150, yeah.
Yeah,
so just
no body fat at all.
Right.
So you're 33, right?
You're getting a little bigger, but it's just not competing anymore. But no, the journey was a wild journey, a lot of trial and error, a lot of learning from adversity. One thing my coaches at Virginia really taught me is how to handle adversity. Okay. A lot of points in life, I look at adversity and you sort of, falter away or don't really know how to react, but you only learn through those trials. Those adversities make you better. Sure. And I definitely had a lot of adversity thrown my way. My second year of college, I had complete reconstructive hip surgery to where there was really a chance that I wasn't able to wrestle ever again.
Yeah, that is not something.
It was about 11-month recovery, and I came back that following year and was able to make the round of 12, which I was certainly in good health when I was at the NCAA tournament, but it's something you learn how to handle those adversities.
Well, and you're thankful. A mental issue too. I mean, you gotta to pull that trigger healthy is one thing. To pull the trigger after a reconstruction of your hip is another. So I get that. Sure.
Yeah, so you learn to appreciate everything you have. I was very fortunate to have parents who were willing to support me, have a school that was willing to support me. So cool. I have a lot of support, from the community as well, and it makes you really fortunate for your health too.
Absolutely, thankful. And so that happens, and now you make the next year you get to the pinnacle.
Right. Yes. Yeah. So I decided. Actually, it was during the preseason. I was on my way down to 133 my senior year. Okay. Yes. And I remember Frank Pirelli. He's an athlete who trains out of Lehigh now. He's on the Olympic ladder. Sure. He was in Virginia for a year training at our regional training center, and he was sort of my close mentor, drill partner. Okay. He was obviously a couple steps above me, being at the Olympic level, Olympic hopeful level. But I was around 145, 146, making my way down to 33. In the summers, I'd walk around at 55. Sure. He's like, dude, why don't you just go 41? Like, you feel awesome at this weight, just kind of building me up rather than continuing to kick my butt.
Love that.
And he was and he really sort of paved the way for my motivation to go up to 141. Sure. And I sort of had this mentality the last my junior year and sophomore year of I wanted to go up, but sort of the fear of the unknown, the fear of not really knowing
how
where
strong those guys are.
Right.
What they can do to me.
But my junior year, Bryce Meredith made the finals of the NCAA tournament, and the year prior I had wrestled him twice.
Was he at Wyoming?
He was the year that I wrestled him, he was at NC State. We were both at 133.
Right. That's right.
And his junior year, his sophomore year would have been my junior year. He made the finals. Sure. And indirectly, that sort of motivated me, like, hey,
I can do it.
I had beaten that guy, so, I feel like I'm definitely at that level. That was part of the motivation to go up, and just the belief in myself. I started developing this mindset of not really looking at everybody else and what they're good at, but rather looking within myself and saying, okay, this is where I'm good.
I love it.
So it was a moment of growth for me. It was a big leap of faith. It was at the point where I had made the round of 12 my first 3 years, and not All-American, where I definitely, I had beaten All-Americans. I had done what it took to get to that point, just hadn't gotten it done. Yep. So to go up a weight and try to do that too was sort of a leap of faith. Sure. But I sort of had this mentality my senior year where I didn't really care about anybody else or anything else. I was just on tunnel vision on what I had to do and focused on where I was good. Right. And it alleviated a lot of stress. And fortunately, I was
having fun.
Yeah, I was having a lot more fun.
Yeah, that's it, man. Look at what Penn State does when they have fun.
Exactly, yeah. That's their whole mantra.
It's really a whole different mindset. And that's what Cale, I guess, back in the day when he was not having fun, he wanted to quit the sport, went to a psychologist and he said, go have some fun. One word, fun. And look at that team.
Yeah.
They enjoy this sport, don't they?
Yeah. So my senior year, I had a ton of fun. And
that's awesome.
It's funny how things come full circle. And, sure. we're all sort of blood in a sense.
Yes,
my semifinals match, I'll never forget this. And I still see him to this day. In fact, I saw him this last week. One of my first wrestling coaches, Mike Giannetti.
Sure.
He wrestled at John Carroll as well.
Oh, yeah.
And I wrestled in the semifinals against Bryce Meredith, who I had mentioned before.
Right.
And I was fortunate to win the match. And I remember just getting up and being so joyful and happy for making it to this point that I never thought I'd get to.
Imagine.
And I look in the crowd and there's a picture of me pointing. And I'm pointing front row. I hadn't known prior, but front row. I remember seeing Coach Giannetti in the front row in the middle of St. Louis. It's crazy that my eyes just locked on him.
I love it.
And it's just a crazy thing. How
nobody can explain that.
Nobody can explain the love and appreciation I have, and just how everything comes full circle. He was my very first wrestling coach,
and
for him to be there,
terrific guy,
and for him to be there in my last tournament ever, to support me. Was amazing.
Yeah, it's great. And so you make the finals against a big rival.
Yeah.
And, of course, Dean wins it.
Yeah.
But still, you make it.
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit about that experience. And then, obviously, there's a disappointment, but also there's got to be some type of satisfaction as well.
Yeah. Obviously, the goal that year wasn't to get the monkey off my back of being an All-American. It was actually winning the tournament.
Of course.
So, obviously, it was a little bit of a downer.
Sure.
But at the same time, you look back on everything that made you who you are in the process.
Right.
All the hard weight cuts, all the tough practices. It's sort of that character building that makes you who you are.
Yep.
And I just remember looking. So when you're on the podium in NCAAs, they make you do like quarter turns.
Yep.
And to look at like each part of the crowd.
Yep.
And I remember doing my last quarter turn and looking at the Virginia crowd and seeing my parents.
Oh, wow.
And just everything that. And it's just sort of like a flashback. You just see it within a 10-second span, like all these trips and all these practices. Man. It's just a movie that happens in your mind in the last 10 seconds. Yes. And it was more so about that. Obviously, I was pretty down about losing.
Of course.
And
you're
obviously,
a warrior, man. You're a warrior.
Yeah,
you don't want to lose.
But the further removed you get from it,
yeah,
and especially now in my role in the business world, you see those moments that got you to that point are sort of, obviously, like I said, make you who you are. As I make decisions in life and like my mindset, the way it is, I can see those experiences in wrestling really paying off. Like I could sense, that I'm making decisions because of the foundation, the values that I
those are your true treasures. Those are your trophies.
Yeah.
And it's not the wins or losses. It's the trophies that you get from the lessons.
And it's not to say too, like, obviously I want to win. I'm a really competitive person, and who doesn't like to win?
Of course.
But at the end of the day, it's just sort of the mindset that my parents and my coaches and everyone's always, especially my Virginia coaches, have always instilled in me is, being fixed on results, being fixed on the process of becoming a better person along the way.
I love that. And also, too, I talked to my team about losing with creativity, figuring out a way to win down the road.
Yep.
But also, too, understanding that, in the sport of baseball, if you lose 7 out of 10 times, you're in the Hall of Fame.
Right.
If you lose 6 out of 10 times, you're the best ever.
Right.
So you're still going to lose more than you're going to win, no matter what you do. So you got to have to learn how to understand that in business. So now we talk about business, and you're doing pretty well at a very successful corporation called Lincoln Electric, right?
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit about what's going on there.
For everyone who doesn't know what Lincoln Electric is, I tell my friends. I have a lot of friends on the East Coast, and I say Lincoln Electric.
Yes.
They're not from Cleveland, so they don't really know what Lincoln Electric is, so I have to explain to them. They're a welding manufacturer. They produce welding equipment, welding tools, and they obviously have a weld school where they teach people how to weld.
Sure.
Teach welding.
Yeah. A very important job in our society that we're losing.
Underappreciated, and it'll definitely be in demand in the future.
We need welders and carpenters and plumbers and people that just put stuff together. Right.
So we refer to ourselves as the welding capital of the world.
I love it.
And so I'm a financial analyst there. I work in their corporate offices in Euclid.
Nice.
And I'm in a rotation program right now to where in a 2-year span, I'd started about a year-ish ago.
Sure.
In a 2-year span, I get rotated within different departments within corporate finance.
Okay.
Ultimately, where at the end, they sort of place me where I perform the best and where there's sort of a need.
Nice.
So I've been put on a lot of cool projects, a lot of different implementations of different technology.
Okay.
In fact, this coming year, I'm getting a really cool opportunity to be a part of an implementation of what's called robotic process automation, RPA.
Okay.
Where we're designing essentially robots to do mundane tasks.
Sure.
To take burden off of people's plates to where they can critically think about their jobs and what they're doing even more. So
I love that.
It's again, it in my mind, it goes back a little bit to wrestling and sort of the mindset of always wanting to improve the status quo and where you are.
I love that.
And that's the mindset that the department that I'm in is really taking is taking an approach of, hey, we're doing good here,
sure,
but where can we be better?
Yes.
And that's, if I wouldn't have that mindset if it wasn't for the sport of wrestling.
The search and the continual strive for excellence, right? And it's interesting too, because I was talking to a gentleman who's involved heavily with Amazon and all the robotics that are going to be coming in for the packaging. Yeah. It's incredible what's coming. They're saying that the only humans that will be in the packaging departments or massive facilities are engineers. Yeah. To fix the robots.
Exactly.
So that's what's coming. That's what's one of the 8 disruptive technologies, along with blockchain, IoT, AI, robotics, etc., 5G. Right. Wow, what a great new world we're going to be living in soon, right?
Yeah, it's crazy, and it's that growth mindset of always looking at where you're at and being competitive, not only with those around you, different people in the industry, but also yourself, and saying, where can I push myself to be better? Because ultimately, I want to be a leader. I want to be a leader at Lincoln. Awesome. And to get there, I have to push myself beyond what I'm doing to maybe something I don't know. I don't know a ton about RPA, but I'm looking forward to learning more, just to continue to diversify myself and just be better than I was yesterday.
Well, George, I have just been so impressed with this conversation. You've put yourself. First of all, you started with great DNA. Love your parents. Love your parents. Love your uncles. They're phenomenal people. Done some amazing things in Cleveland as well as the country. Yeah. Also, too, have put yourself in a terrific situation with Mayfield, St. Ignatius, Virginia, and now Lincoln Electric. Quality. Yeah. Search for excellence. I just love that. And I'm very encouraged because of your generation. And to see this type of quality, it just makes me very hopeful for our future.
Yeah,
and
me too.
keep people, hold them to the fire. You know what I'm saying? Around your age group, come on, guys, let's go. Come on, gals, let's do this. You know what I mean?
There's definitely a level of accountability that our generation definitely needs to some extent.
Yes, but I'll tell you what, I've been surrounded by I met my assistant coach, Jake Goodwin. That guy is a stud. Man.
Funny story. Yeah. We had to have wrestled maybe 2 or 3 times at some point, whether it was Super 32 or maybe even in college at some point.
I think he's a little bit younger than you. He's 25 or 26.
Yeah, we may have wrestled in high school. In fact, I think we wrestled 3rd and 4th at Super 32 one year. Okay. Maybe. Okay. I could be wrong, but I know him. And he wrestled in Notre Dame. He's a good kid. He's a great assistant coach. Yeah. I couldn't be more blessed. What a phenomenal technician. Yeah. And just a terrific guy. And you're right around your same age. I think he graduated college like in 17 or 16, something like that. So when did you graduate? I graduated UVA in 16. But wrestled through 17 because of the red shirt. Exactly right. Finished my master's this August, and now I'm studying for the CPA. Well, keep doing good stuff, man. Yeah. I really appreciate it. So, I want to thank you for coming in. I want to thank all of the people that made you who you are. Definitely plenty. And please leave us with something that you'd like to leave the audience. The biggest lesson I took from wrestling is how to, like I said, handle adversity. Okay. We had a mentor and someone who was around the Virginia wrestling program pretty strongly. His name was Jim Harshaw. Jim Harshaw, yeah. And he always said that failure isn't, you don't avoid failure to get to success. You actually embrace it to succeed. It's sort of that failing forward mindset of not being afraid to fail. There's a lot of times in life where you can get comfortable. There's a lot of times in life where, you're complacent where you're at. Yeah. But being not afraid to push the wall back and grow further by failing is something that's really changed my life, and wrestling's a big part of that. And now the way I approach life of trying to continually get better, that growth mindset is is something that if any listener out there can embody and put in their own life, that's helped me tremendously.
Well, George, I really appreciate great words, and I really appreciate you coming in here. Thank you so much. Yeah. Give my best to your entire family. Mm-hmm. We are blood, Coach CIMORONI. Love to all. I want to share my thought of the day with you. Spread love and always leave where you were better than before you arrived.